Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Evelyn Carter stood before the full-length mirror, smoothing the scarlet gown against her curves. The color complemented her deep bronze skin perfectly, making her feel radiant despite the anxiety in her stomach. Tonight was special, her 29th birthday and first wedding anniversary with Julian, celebrated together at the Regency Hotel's grand ballroom. "Just perfect," she whispered, adjusting the silver necklace at her throat, her mother's necklace. The last gift before cancer took her 2 years ago. The mirror reflected a woman of undeniable beauty, almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, and full lips painted a subtle mauve. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, with carefully arranged tendrils framing her face. Her phone chimed with a message from the event planner, confirming everything was set up according to specifications. Evelyn exhaled slowly, trying to release the tension that had been building for weeks. "He'll be there," she assured her reflection. He promised. Their first year of marriage had started like a fairy tale. Julian Hayes, with his charming smile and ambitious plans, had swept into her life and dazzled her with his attention when she was still grieving her mother's death. The handsome venture capitalist had pursued her relentlessly after they met at a gallery opening featuring her architectural design work. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a wedding that, while not extravagant, had felt perfect to Evelyn. The problems began 6 months ago. Julian's firm took on several high-risk clients, and the pressure changed him. Late nights became the norm. When home, he was distracted and irritable. The warm gazes and passionate nights dwindled, replaced by curt conversations and separate bedtimes. Evelyn told herself it was just a rough patch. All marriages had them. Tonight would change everything. Evelyn had spent weeks planning this celebration to remind Julian of what they had together. She'd invited 100 guests, carefully mixing their friends, colleagues, and family. The menu featured Julian's favorite foods, the band knew his preferred songs, and the entire event celebrated not just their anniversary, but the promising future ahead. Most importantly, she had the watch. Evelyn opened her jewelry box and removed a sleek black case. Inside, nestled on midnight velvet, was a limited edition Audemars Piguet watch with a sapphire-encrusted bezel, Julian's dream timepiece. She had caught him admiring it months ago, his eyes lingering even as he laughed about its extravagant price. It had cost Evelyn her most precious asset, the small plot of land in Georgia that her mother had left her. The property represented so much more than acreage and trees. It was the place where she and her mother had picnicked under the sprawling willow tree every summer, where they'd lain on blankets, watching meteor showers and dreaming of the future, where her mother had planned to build her retirement home someday, sketching designs that Evelyn had later refined with her professional training. "I know you understand, Mama," Evelyn whispered, touching the silver necklace. "You always said true love was worth any sacrifice." Her chest tightened as she remembered the day she signed the sale papers. The developer had already marked the old willow for removal to make way for luxury homes. When she'd asked if they might preserve it, he'd laughed and called it just another tree. That tree had been where her mother's ashes were scattered, at her specific request, to remain in the place she loved most. Evelyn pushed the painful memory aside. The sacrifice would be worth it if it brought back the man she had fallen in love with. Her doorbell rang, announcing the car service. With a final glance in the mirror, Evelyn tucked the watch case in her clutch and headed out, the butterflies in her stomach, no longer from anxiety but anticipation. The Regency Hotel's grand ballroom was transformed under Evelyn's careful direction. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in ivory linens. Centerpieces of scarlet roses rose from silver vases, while candles created intimate pools of light. A string quartet played softly near the dance floor, which remained empty as guests mingled during cocktail hour. Evelyn stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals with a gracious smile that betrayed none of her growing concern. It was 45 minutes into the event, and Julian had yet to appear. "The man of the hour still stuck at the office?" asked Amara, Evelyn's best friend since college, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. "Apparently," Evelyn replied, taking a small sip. "He texted that he was wrapping up a meeting and would be here soon." Amara's expression revealed her skepticism, but she kept her thoughts to herself. "Happy birthday, girl, and happy anniversary. You've created something beautiful here. Thank you." Evelyn's gaze drifted over the room, pride momentarily displacing worry. Everything's perfect, just waiting on my husband to complete the picture. As if summoned, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Julian had arrived, but Evelyn's relief quickly dissolved into concern. His tie was askew, his hair disheveled, and there was a slight unsteadiness to his gait, suggesting he'd been drinking. He scanned the room until he spotted Evelyn. "There she is," he announced loudly, "the birthday girl and anniversary wife." He approached Evelyn with none of his usual grace, planting a perfunctory kiss on her cheek that reeked of expensive bourbon. "You made it," Evelyn said softly, reaching to straighten his tie. He jerked away from her touch. "Of course I made it. Wouldn't miss my own anniversary party, would I?" There was an edge to his voice that sent alarm bells ringing in Evelyn's mind. "Everyone's here," she said, trying to maintain normalcy. "Your partners from the firm, my design clients. Even your mother made it in from Boston." "Wonderful," Julian replied flatly, grabbing a champagne flute and downing it in one swallow. "Shall we begin the festivities? Isn't there some kind of program for the evening?" Amara squeezed Evelyn's arm supportively before melting away, giving the couple space. Evelyn took a deep breath, pushing aside concerns. This was their night. She wouldn't let Julian's mood spoil it. "Dinner will be served soon," she explained. "I thought we might say a few words to our guests first. Thank them for coming." "Perfect. I have quite a few words to say." Something in Julian's tone made Evelyn's skin prickle with unease. Before she could respond, he was striding toward the small stage where the quartet played, signaling for them to pause. Evelyn followed, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to speak together, share memories of their first year. But Julian was already taking the microphone, tapping it twice to ensure it worked. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice echoing through the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Thank you all for coming to this elaborate celebration." He gestured widely at the decorations, something like disdain flickering across his features. Evelyn stood at the edge of the stage, frozen, as Julian continued. "My wife went to extraordinary lengths to mark our first anniversary." He emphasized extraordinary in a way that made it sound like an accusation. Evelyn has always been one for grand gestures, for appearances, for showing the world what a perfect couple we are. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. "Julian," she whispered, taking a step toward him, "what are you doing?" He ignored her, his focus on the increasingly uncomfortable guests. "The truth is, there's nothing to celebrate tonight. Our marriage has been a mistake from the beginning, a business arrangement that outlived its usefulness." The room fell deadly silent. Evelyn felt as though she'd been plunged into ice water, her body numb with shock. "You see," Julian continued, his voice growing colder, "I married Evelyn because she had connections in the design world that benefited my investment portfolio. She married me because she thought I could give her the status and security she so desperately craves." He looked directly at Evelyn now, his blue eyes devoid of warmth. "But I've come to realize that no amount of expensive parties or desperate attempts to impress me can make this charade worth continuing." Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred as tears threatened, but she blinked them back fiercely, refusing to break down before the room full of stunned onlookers. "So, in honor of our anniversary," Julian reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope. "I'm giving my wife what she truly deserves." He extended the envelope toward Evelyn with a cruel smile. "Divorce papers, Evelyn. Consider yourself served." The envelope fell to the stage between them. Evelyn stared at it, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the humiliation unfolding. The clutched purse in her hand, containing the watch she had sacrificed her mother's land to purchase, suddenly felt unbearably heavy. "Did you really think her watch would fix everything?" Julian asked, his voice lower now but still amplified by the microphone. "Did you think I wouldn't find out about you selling that land your mother left you? The land with the tree where her ashes are scattered?" He shook his head with mock sympathy. "Pathetic, just like this marriage." At the mention of her mother's ashes, something broke inside Evelyn. The tears she had been fighting spilled over, her mother's necklace suddenly burning against her skin. The room spun around her, as whispers erupted from the crowd, faces blurred together, pitying, shocked, some even amused at her public devastation. She took an unsteady step backward, nearly stumbling off the stage. "I suggest everyone enjoy the expensive dinner my soon-to-be ex-wife has provided," Julian concluded, replacing the microphone. "Consider it her parting gift to us all." He descended from the stage without another glance at Evelyn, heading straight for the exit. The silence that followed his departure was deafening, broken only by the sound of Evelyn's purse hitting the floor, the black watch case tumbling out onto the polished wood. A sob escaped her throat as she sank to her knees, no longer able to maintain dignity. The beautiful scarlet dress pooled around her like spilled wine as she covered her face, shoulders shaking with grief and humiliation. Through the haze of her breakdown, Evelyn was vaguely aware of movement around her, Amara's voice, fierce with protective anger, other friends approaching, then hesitating, unsure how to navigate the catastrophe they had witnessed. Then, unexpectedly, a gentle hand touched her shoulder. She looked up through tear-blurred vision to see a face she didn't recognize, a tall man with kind hazel eyes and broad shoulders, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit. His expression held no pity, only quiet understanding that somehow cut through her shame. "May I?" he asked softly, offering a pristine handkerchief. Evelyn accepted it wordlessly, pressing the soft fabric to her cheeks. The stranger knelt beside her, shielding her somewhat from the stares of the crowd. "My name is Marcus Thornton," he said, his voice a deep, soothing baritone. "I was invited by a mutual acquaintance. I've never seen such unforgivable cruelty displayed so publicly." Evelyn tried to speak, but another sob choked her words. Marcus's hand remained steady on her shoulder, an anchor in the storm. "What that man did was unconscionable," he continued, his calm tone belying the fire in his eyes. "No one deserves such treatment, especially not someone who clearly put their whole heart into this evening." Somehow, his words penetrated the shell of Evelyn's shock. She drew a shuddering breath, finding her voice at last. "I just wanted to save our marriage," she whispered, her fingers instinctively reaching for her mother's necklace. "I gave up all I had left of her." "Some things aren't meant to be saved," Marcus replied, "and some people aren't worthy of the salvation offered to them." He reached down and picked up the watch case, closing it gently before returning it to her hands. "Someone who would use your mother's memory as a weapon doesn't deserve any sacrifice," he said, a flash of personal pain crossing his features before his composure returned. Before Evelyn could respond, a commotion at the ballroom entrance caught their attention. Julian had returned, his face flushed with anger as he stalked toward the stage. "Still putting on a show, Evelyn," he called out. "Found yourself a shoulder to cry on already?" Marcus rose to his full height, positioning himself between Evelyn and her approaching husband. Two men security personnel materialized beside Marcus, their stances protective. "I believe you've said quite enough for one evening, Mr. Hayes," Marcus said, his voice no longer gentle, but carrying a steel edge that stopped Julian in his tracks. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Julian demanded, glaring at Marcus. "Someone who recognizes a woman of value when he sees one," Marcus replied evenly. "Something you clearly failed to do." Julian took another step forward, but the security men moved in tandem, blocking his path. The message was clear. He was not welcome to approach. "Sir," one of the security men said firmly, "I suggest you leave the premises now, before this situation escalates further." Julian glanced between the guards, then at Marcus, whose calm demeanor seemed to enrage him further. Finally, his gaze landed on Evelyn, still kneeling on the stage, clutching the handkerchief to her face with one hand and her mother's necklace with the other. "You're not worth this," he spat. "You never were." With that parting shot, he turned and stormed out, leaving an uncomfortable silence behind him. Marcus turned back to Evelyn, extending his hand to help her up. Hesitantly, she accepted it, allowing him to assist her to her feet. His hand was warm and strong around hers, steadying her when she swayed slightly. "Thank you," she managed, embarrassment flooding her anew as she became fully aware of the audience still watching. "No need for thanks," Marcus replied. He hadn't released her hand, and something in his expression had shifted, a determination replacing his earlier concern. "Miss Carter Evelyn, I know this is unorthodox, perhaps even inappropriate given the circumstances, but I believe in seizing moments of clarity when they arrive." Evelyn blinked at him, confusion momentarily displacing her distress. "What do you mean?" Marcus took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've followed your design work for some time, your transformation of the community center, the way you create spaces that heal through beauty. I was meant to meet you professionally last month, but circumstances prevented it." A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Evelyn felt heat rising to her cheeks, unsure where this unexpected conversation was heading. "What I'm trying to say," Marcus continued, his voice growing more confident, is a woman like you deserves devotion, not derision. You deserve someone who recognizes your worth, who would treasure rather than trivialize your thoughtfulness." With a fluid movement that startled a gasp from the onlookers, Marcus lowered himself to one knee before Evelyn, still holding her hand in his. "I would be that man if you'd give me the chance," he said, his expression utterly sincere. "Evelyn Carter, would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you properly, with the intention of marriage? I promise you will never again know the pain of unappreciated love." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Evelyn stared down at the kneeling man before her, certain she had slipped into some surreal dream born of her emotional trauma. This handsome stranger, this Marcus Thornton, was proposing marriage to her minutes after her husband had publicly divorced her. "You don't even know me," she finally managed, her voice barely audible. "I know enough," Marcus replied without hesitation. "I know you have a generous heart, exquisite taste, and the courage to face humiliation with grace. The rest, I would spend a lifetime discovering, if you'd allow it." Chapter 2. The first proposal. 2 weeks after the disastrous anniversary party, Evelyn sat alone in her small design studio. The morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, illuminating fabric samples and sketches scattered across her desk. She hadn't accepted any new clients since that night, focusing instead on existing projects that required minimal interaction with others. The divorce papers remained unsigned on her coffee table at home, not because she harbored any hope of reconciliation with Julian, but because signing them felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that she had been foolish enough to sell her mother's land for a man who had likely never loved her at all. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Amara entered, carrying coffee and pastries, concern etched on her face. "You look like you actually slept last night," Amara said, setting the coffee on Evelyn's desk. "Almost 4 hours," Evelyn replied with a weak smile. A new record. Amara perched on the edge of the desk, studying her friend. "Have you thought about calling him?" There was no need to specify which him she meant. Marcus Thornton's business card sat in the center of Evelyn's desk, its presence impossible to ignore. She had researched him extensively since that night, the self-made real estate developer whose sustainable building projects had revolutionized affordable housing while making him a fortune. His philanthropic foundation provided scholarships to underprivileged students. No scandals, no failed marriages, nothing to suggest he was anything but the gentleman he'd appeared to be. "And say what?" Evelyn asked, tracing the embossed letters of his name. "Thank you for your marriage proposal, but I'm still recovering from public humiliation by my soon-to-be ex-husband. You could start with, 'Thank you for being the only decent man in the room that night,'" Amara suggested. She hesitated before adding, "Not everyone gets a second chance at love, Evelyn." "That wasn't love," Evelyn countered. "That was, I don't know what that was. Pity? A savior complex? No one proposes to a stranger unless something's not right." Amara shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe sometimes people just know." She stood, heading for the door. "Just promise me you won't throw away the card." After Amara left, Evelyn couldn't concentrate. She kept thinking about Marcus's eyes, the way they had looked at her with such certainty, such conviction, as though he truly saw her value when she felt most worthless. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. "The Metropolitan Museum is hosting a charity gala for arts education tomorrow night. Your name was on the guest list from your work with their design committee last year. I hope you'll attend. The world deserves to see your light, even when you feel most in shadow. Marcus." Evelyn stared at the message, her heart racing unexpectedly. How had he gotten her number? How did he know about her museum committee work? The question should have alarmed her, but instead, she felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in months. Curiosity, interest, the faintest spark of anticipation. The gala was a glittering affair. The museum's great hall transformed into an enchanted forest with delicate light installations creating the illusion of stars overhead. Evelyn had almost canceled a dozen times, but Amara's insistence and her own stubborn determination not to let Julian reduce her to a recluse had won out. She wore midnight blue instead of her usual bold colors, wanting to blend into the background. But the simple column dress, with its subtle silver beading along the neckline, only seemed to highlight her elegant collarbones and the graceful line of her neck, drawing more attention than she'd intended. For the first hour, she managed to avoid most conversation beyond polite greetings, positioning herself near a quiet alcove featuring Renaissance sculptures. She wasn't hiding, exactly just observing, gathering her strength. The Bernini is breathtaking, isn't it? The deep voice behind her sent an involuntary shiver down Evelyn's spine. She turned to find Marcus Thornton, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, regarding not the sculpture but her. The way he captured vulnerability and strength in the same moment, Marcus continued, moving to stand beside her. It reminds me of someone I met recently. Evelyn found her voice. Are we pretending this is a coincidence, Mr. Thornton? His smile was warm, genuine. Marcus, please. And no, not a coincidence. I hoped you would come. How did you get my number? She asked directly. Your friend Amara. She was protective at first, but eventually decided I might be worthy of at least a text message. He studied her face. Are you angry? Evelyn considered the question. No, she answered truthfully. Just cautious. Men who make grand gestures tend to disappear when real life resumes. A fair assessment based on your experience, Marcus acknowledged, though I could argue that men who value appearance over substance are not men at all. A server passed with champagne. Marcus took 2 glasses, offering one to Evelyn, who accepted it hesitantly. I should apologize, he said, his expression growing serious. My proposal that night was impulsive, not because I didn't mean it, but because it wasn't fair to you in that moment. Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. It was unexpected. I followed your work for over a year, Marcus admitted. Your design for the community center, the way you created spaces that comforted without condescending, that healed through beauty without ostentation. I was supposed to meet you at fundraiser last month, but business took me overseas. Evelyn remembered the event, recalling the empty place sitting at her table. That was you? He nodded. When I saw you at your anniversary, I recognized you immediately. Then, watching how you faced unimaginable cruelty with such dignity, he trailed off, his eyes intense. Some people collapse under pressure. Others reveal their true strength. You were luminous in your pain, Evelyn. The raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. No one had ever seen her that way, not as a designer whose work they admired, not as a wife whose appearance complemented her husband, but as a woman whose character shone through her darkest moment. I don't know what to say to that, she admitted. You don't need to say anything. Marcus gestured toward the museum's rooftop garden. Would you walk with me? The city looks magical from up there. Against her better judgment, Evelyn nodded. As they moved through the crowd, she noticed how Marcus greeted others with genuine warmth, but kept a respectful distance from her, not touching her elbow or placing his hand on her back, as Julian might have done to assert ownership. The garden was quieter, with only a few guests braving the cool evening air. Twinkling lights wove through potted trees, and the city stretched out before them in a tapestry of light and shadow. I grew up in foster care, Marcus said quietly as they stood at the parapet, moving from home to home, never quite belonging. I learned to recognize genuine souls. They were rare and precious in my world. Evelyn turned to him, surprised by the personal revelation. When I was 16, he continued, I met an architect who saw something in me no one else had bothered to notice. He mentored me, helped me apply to college, showed me how to transform spaces and lives simultaneously. His gaze was distant, remembering. He taught me that recognizing value in others isn't just kindness, it's wisdom. Is that what you were doing that night, recognizing value? Evelyn asked. Yes, Marcus answered simply. And no, he turned to face her fully. Evelyn, I won't pretend my reaction to you was purely intellectual admiration. There was something else, something I've never experienced before. From an inside pocket, he withdrew a small box. Evelyn's heart lurched, thinking wildly that he might be producing a ring, but when he opened it, she saw a delicate silver compass on a chain. My first real proposal, Marcus said softly, not offered in the heat of the moment, but with clear intention. He held up the compass. When I was lost as a child, my only constant was knowing that north would always be north, even when I couldn't see the stars, even when everything else changed. That remained true. He extended the box toward her. I'm not asking for marriage tonight. I'm asking for a chance to show you that not all men are like Julian, that love can be a compass, not a cage, that you deserve someone who sees your true worth and values it above all else. Evelyn looked from the compass to Marcus's face, her heart racing. I barely know you, she whispered. Then know this, he said. I will never rush you. I will never shame you. I will never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. His voice grew softer. And if all you can offer is friendship, I will treasure that gift and never demand more." The sincerity in his eyes made Evelyn's carefully constructed walls waver. After a moment's hesitation, she reached for the compass, her fingers brushing his as she lifted it from the box. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Like its owner," Marcus replied. When she looked up sharply, he smiled. "Too much?" Despite herself, Evelyn laughed, the first genuine laugh since that terrible night. "Definitely too much." His answering smile was brilliant. "I'll work on my delivery." As he took the necklace and moved behind her to fasten it, Evelyn felt his warmth like a shield against the cool night air. The compass settled against her skin, its weight unfamiliar but not unwelcome. "Thank you," she said, turning to face him again. "Not just for this, but for that night. For seeing me." Marcus's expression softened. "Evelyn Carter, I would be honored if you would join me for dinner next week. Just dinner. Just conversation. A proper beginning." Evelyn touched the compass at her throat, feeling something fragile unfurl in her chest. Not love, not yet, but perhaps its precursor, hope. "Yes," she said simply, "I'd like that." Chapter 3. The rescue 3 weeks had passed since the museum gala where Marcus had given Evelyn the compass necklace. After that night, Evelyn had cautiously agreed to a proper first date, a quiet dinner at an intimate French restaurant where Marcus had impressed her with his knowledge of architecture and genuine interest in her design philosophy. She'd expected awkwardness, but found herself surprisingly comfortable in his presence. Their second meeting was an afternoon at a local art exhibition, where Marcus had confessed his complete ignorance about modern art, showing a vulnerability that endeared him to her. "I can design buildings but can't decipher a canvas of colored squares," he'd admitted with a self-deprecating smile. That small admission of imperfection had done more to earn her trust than any grand gesture. Their third encounter, a Sunday morning walking through the botanical gardens, had shown her yet another side of him. Marcus knew the Latin names of plants, a hobby picked up from a foster mother who'd been a botanist, the only one who actually cared, he'd explained, quietly, hesitating before sharing brief glimpses of foster homes, where affection was conditional at best, non-existent at worst. Now, after their fourth meeting, a quiet dinner at his penthouse, where he'd cooked for her himself. Rather impressively, though he'd burned the first batch of dinner rolls, Evelyn found herself contemplating the slow, deliberate way Marcus was courting her. Unlike Julian's whirlwind of attention and flattery, Marcus seemed content to build a foundation stone by stone, respecting her still healing heart. Tonight, Evelyn had stayed late at her studio, finalizing designs for a community center project. The compass necklace he'd given her rested against her skin beneath her blouse. She wore it daily now, though she couldn't quite explain why, perhaps because it represented something she desperately needed: direction, certainty, the promise that even in darkness, there was a way forward. The night air had a pleasant crispness as she locked the studio door. Amara had offered a ride home, but Evelyn had declined. The walk would clear her head of the confused feelings that swirled whenever she thought of Marcus. His patience both reassured and unnerved her. Was she reading too much into his careful approach? Did his restraint reflect respect or merely polite interest? Lost in these thoughts, she was 3 blocks from her apartment when she sensed, rather than heard, someone following her. Quickening her pace, Evelyn clutched her portfolio tighter against her chest, her heart beginning to race. When heavy footsteps sounded directly behind her, she broke into a run, only to collide with a solid figure that stepped out from between 2 parked cars. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Hayes?" The man's face was unfamiliar, but his tone made it clear this was no random encounter. Or is it Miss Carter again? Hard to keep track. Evelyn stepped back, finding herself trapped between the first man and a second, who had emerged from the shadows. "What do you want?" she demanded. "Just a friendly conversation," the second man said, his smile anything but friendly. "About those assets you're claiming in the divorce. Mr. Hayes thinks you might reconsider your position." Fear crystallized into anger. "He sent you to threaten me? That's low, even for Julian." The first man shrugged. "He's a businessman. This is negotiation." He reached out, grabbing Evelyn's wrist. "Let's discuss terms somewhere more private." Evelyn jerked away, her portfolio falling to the sidewalk, designs scattering in the evening breeze. "Get your hands off me." The second man moved closer. "Don't make this difficult, lady. We're just delivering a message. Tonight could be worse next time." The threat hung in the air, making Evelyn's blood run cold. She opened her mouth to scream when the sudden squeal of tires drew everyone's attention. A sleek black car swerved to the curb, and Marcus Thornton emerged, his usually kind eyes now hard as flint. "I believe the lady asked you to step back," he said, his voice deadly quiet. The men exchanged glances, clearly evaluating this unexpected complication. "This is a private matter," the first thug said. "Move along." Marcus's laugh held no humor. "Evelyn, are these men bothering you?" "They work for Julian," she managed, relief washing over her at Marcus's unexpected appearance. Something dangerous flashed across Marcus's face. "Gentlemen, I suggest you leave now." For a moment, Evelyn thought they might comply. Then the first man reached into his jacket, the glint of metal catching the streetlight as he pulled out a knife. "The rich boy wants to play hero," he sneered. "Bad choice." What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. The man lunged forward, but Marcus moved with unexpected grace, deflecting the knife hand and delivering a precise strike that sent the attacker staggering backward. The second man rushed him from behind, but Marcus spun, using the man's momentum to throw him off balance. Evelyn watched in stunned silence as Marcus fought with the controlled precision of someone with professional training. When the first attacker came at him again, Marcus redirected the knife, but not before the blade sliced across his shoulder, tearing through his suit jacket. Despite the injury, Marcus delivered a devastating combination that left both men groaning on the pavement. "Evelyn," Marcus said urgently. "My car, now." She didn't hesitate, hurrying to the vehicle as Marcus gathered her scattered designs with his uninjured arm. Once inside, he handed her the portfolio and started the engine, pulling away with controlled speed. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice tight. "No, I'm fine, but you're bleeding," Evelyn replied, staring at the dark stain spreading across his shoulder. "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospitals," Marcus said firmly. "Too many questions." "My penthouse isn't far. I have supplies there." Despite her concern, Evelyn nodded. The last thing she needed was police reports that might give Julian more ammunition in their increasingly bitter divorce proceedings. Marcus's penthouse occupied the top floor of a sleek high-rise overlooking the river. Under different circumstances, Evelyn would have admired the clean architectural lines and thoughtful design details. Instead, she followed him urgently to the bathroom, where he shrugged out of his ruined jacket and shirt with a grimace of pain. "First aid kit under the sink," he directed, sitting on the edge of the marble tub. Evelyn found it surprisingly comprehensive and turned to find Marcus bare-chested before her. Despite the circumstances, she couldn't help noticing his athletic build, the defined muscles of his chest and abdomen, the smooth brown skin now marred by a 6-inch gash across his right shoulder. "It looks worse than it is," he assured her, seeing her expression. "Surface wound, but it needs cleaning." With trembling hands, Evelyn dampened a cloth and began gently cleaning away the blood. Marcus remained perfectly still, his only reaction a slight tightening around his eyes when she applied antiseptic. "How did you find me?" she asked, focusing on her task rather than their unprecedented physical proximity. "I was coming to your studio to surprise you," he admitted. "Saw you leaving, thought I'd catch up. Then I noticed those men following you." Evelyn's hand stilled. "The way you fought, you've had training." A shadow crossed Marcus's face. "Foster care wasn't always in the best neighborhoods. I learned to defend myself early. Later, I studied martial arts more formally." He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "I was 17 when I got this." He turned slightly, revealing a thin scar along his ribs. "Last foster home, the father was an alcoholic with a temper. He went after his 8-year-old daughter one night. I intervened." The admission, spoken matter-of-factly but loaded with unspoken pain, made Evelyn's heart contract. This glimpse of Marcus's vulnerability, offered without self-pity or dramatics, touched her deeply. "What happened to the girl?" she asked softly, resuming her gentle ministrations. "My mentor, the architect who later helped me get into college, took her in. She's a pediatrician now." A small, genuine smile softened his features. "We still have dinner once a month." Evelyn finished cleaning the wound in silence, absorbing this new dimension of the man before her. Marcus wasn't just the powerful businessman who had proposed marriage in a moment of chivalrous impulse. He was someone who understood pain, who had protected others long before he met her. "Thank you," she whispered, as she applied a bandage. "Not just for tonight, but for telling me about your past." Marcus caught her hand, halting her ministrations. "Evelyn, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, finding them intense with emotion. "I will never let anyone hurt you," he said, each word weighted with conviction. "But I need you to know something. I'm not perfect. I have scars, both visible and hidden. I have a temper I keep carefully controlled. I sometimes work too much and sleep too little." The candid admission startled her. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want you to see me as some fairy tale rescuer," he replied earnestly. "If there's ever going to be something real between us, it needs to be between two flawed, real people, not a white knight and a damsel." Evelyn stared at him, suddenly aware of how close they were, her standing between his knees, his bare chest before her, her hands still caught in his. The honesty in his eyes moved her more than any grand romantic gesture could have. Marcus drew a ragged breath, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before he deliberately released her hand and leaned back slightly. "You should finish with that bandage," he said, his voice rough with restrained emotion. "Then I'll take you home." Evelyn nodded, understanding what had just happened. He had wanted to kiss her, wanted it desperately, but had chosen to respect her still healing heart instead of taking advantage of the moment's vulnerability. As she carefully applied the bandage to his shoulder, Evelyn felt something shift within her. Marcus Thornton had not only fought for her physical safety tonight, but was fighting just as hard to protect her emotional well-being, even from his own desires. When she finished, her fingers lingered on the bandage. "What if I don't want to go home just yet?" she asked softly. Marcus's eyes met hers, searching. "Evelyn, I don't want you to feel obligated because I helped you tonight." "It's not obligation," she assured him, reaching up to touch the compass that hung beneath her blouse. "It's choice, my choice." Slowly, deliberately, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a gentle kiss. Marcus remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then responded with exquisite tenderness, his hand coming up to cradle her face, as though she were made of the most precious porcelain. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he confessed. "Even when I was a mess of tears and smeared makeup?" she asked with a small, unexpected smile. "Especially then," he replied seriously, "because even in your most broken moment, your spirit shone through." Evelyn drew back slightly, studying his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the careful restraint in his touch. This man was nothing like Julian, whose charm had concealed calculation. Marcus's strength was tempered with gentleness, his confidence with humility. "I'm not ready for everything," she admitted quietly. "I'm still sorting through the ruins of one relationship, but I'd like to see where this path leads." Marcus smiled, and for a moment she glimpsed the boy he must have been before life taught him caution, open, hopeful, unguarded. "I'm not asking for everything tonight," he assured her, "just the chance to walk beside you, wherever the path goes." "I'd like that," Evelyn whispered, her hand finding his again. "I'm beginning to think," she added softly, "that sometimes the compass points exactly where you need to go." Chapter 4. The partnership. Evelyn traced her fingers over the embossed letterhead of the legal document, hardly believing what she was reading. Her newest client, a prestigious hospitality group planning a boutique hotel, had abruptly terminated her contract. The carefully worded letter couldn't hide the truth. Julian's influence had poisoned another professional relationship. "That's the third one this month," she murmured, sliding the letter into a growing file of similar rejections. Tears of frustration pricked at her eyes. Her design business wasn't just her livelihood, it was her personal renaissance after years of diminishment in her marriage. Each project she lost felt like Julian reaching from the past to strangle her future. Her phone chimed with a message from Marcus. "Lunch today? I miss your smile." Despite her frustration, warmth bloomed in her chest. Their relationship had evolved naturally since that first kiss in his penthouse 2 weeks ago. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, just a steady deepening of connection. Marcus had become her sanctuary in a storm of Julian's making. "Another canceled contract. Not feeling very smiley today," she replied. His response came immediately. "My office. 1:00 p.m. Bring your portfolio. I have something to show you." Marcus's office occupied the top floor of a sleek glass tower downtown. Unlike Julian's chrome and leather executive suite, designed to intimidate, Marcus's space featured warm woods, living plants, and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the room with natural light. One wall displayed architectural models of his sustainable housing developments. He greeted her with a gentle kiss, his fingers briefly tangling with hers before he led her to a conference table where blueprints were spread out. "What's this?" Evelyn asked, studying the plans. "My newest project," Marcus replied, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "A mixed-use development in the Riverside District, affordable housing, community spaces, retail, and a cultural center." Evelyn examined the blueprints with professional interest, immediately noting the innovative use of space and sustainable elements typical of Marcus's work. "It's remarkable. The integration of green spaces is particularly inspired. It's missing something," Marcus said, watching her closely. "Soul, warmth, the human element that transforms architecture into home." He paused. "Your element, Evelyn." She looked up, suddenly understanding. "Are you offering me a job?" "A partnership," he corrected. "Your design vision alongside my architectural framework, equal collaboration, separate from our personal relationship." Evelyn walked to the window, absorbing the implications. "People will talk. They'll say, 'I'm only getting this opportunity because we're involved.'" Marcus joined her, careful not to crowd her space. "Let them talk. The work will speak for itself." His voice softened. "Besides, I've wanted to collaborate with you professionally since before I knew you personally. Your design for the community center sold me on your talent long before I ever saw your face." Evelyn turned to him, studying his expression. "And if things between us change? The contract is structured to protect your professional interests, regardless of our personal relationship." He took her hand. "Evelyn, I would never use your heart to control your career. That's what Julian is doing right now, using your career to punish your heart." The truth of his words struck her deeply. Julian was weaponizing her professional reputation because he knew how much it meant to her. In contrast, Marcus was offering a path forward that recognized her talents, independent of their growing feelings. "I'd like to see the full proposal," she said finally, "and I'll need my lawyer to review any contracts." Marcus's smile was radiant. "Of course, I'd expect nothing less." As they bent over the blueprints together, discussing possibilities, Evelyn felt something she hadn't experienced since Julian's betrayal: professional hope. Her mind raced with ideas for humanizing the spaces, making them both beautiful and functional for the families who would live there. "This courtyard could become a community garden," she suggested, pointing to an open area. "And these common spaces need to encourage interaction while still respecting privacy." Marcus watched her come alive, her hands moving expressively as she sketched concepts on tracing paper laid over his blueprints. This was the woman he'd glimpsed professionally, from afar, confident, passionate, visionary. "You're extraordinary when you create," he said softly. Evelyn looked up, caught by the admiration in his eyes. Unlike Julian, who had viewed her design career as a useful networking tool, Marcus genuinely valued her creative mind. Their lunch forgotten, they spent hours brainstorming. When Evelyn finally checked the time, she was shocked to discover it was nearly evening. "I had no idea it was so late," she said, gathering her things. "Time disappears when you're building dreams," Marcus replied, helping her organize the sketches she'd created. "Would you have dinner with me? There's a small Ethiopian place nearby that I think you'd love." Before she could answer, her phone rang, her lawyer's number flashing on the screen. With an apologetic glance at Marcus, she answered. "Miss Carter, I've just received notice that your ex-husband is filing a claim for the watch you purchased prior to your separation. His attorney is arguing it constitutes a marital asset due to its significant value." Evelyn's hand tightened around the phone. The sapphire watch, the symbol of her greatest sacrifice, and Julian's cruelest rejection, was now being used as another weapon against her. "That's absurd," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I purchased it with funds from property I inherited before our marriage. Unfortunately, the timing of the purchase falls within the marital period. We can fight this, but prepare yourself for a battle." After ending the call, Evelyn looked up to find Marcus watching her with concern. "Julian?" he asked quietly. "He's claiming the watch as a marital asset." The absurdity suddenly struck her, and a sound between a laugh and a sob escaped her throat. "The watch he publicly rejected. The watch I bought by selling my mother's land." Marcus's expression darkened. "He doesn't want the watch. He wants to hurt you by taking something meaningful." "It's not even about the watch itself anymore," Evelyn admitted, sinking into a chair. It's what it represents, my willingness to sacrifice something precious for a man who never deserved it." She looked up at Marcus, vulnerability clear in her eyes. "I feel like such a fool." In 3 strides, Marcus was kneeling before her chair, taking both her hands in his. "Listen to me. Loving deeply is never foolish, even when the recipient proves unworthy. Your capacity for devotion is a strength, not a weakness." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I understood what that watch meant the moment I saw it fall from your purse that night. I know what it cost you, not just financially, but emotionally." Evelyn studied their joined hands, her slender fingers entwined with his stronger ones. "I'm afraid," she confessed, "not of Julian, but of trusting my own judgment again." To her surprise, Marcus's eyes filled with unexpected vulnerability. "Do you think I'm never afraid?" he asked softly. "I'm terrified of failing you, of not being worthy of the trust you're slowly giving me." The admission stunned her. This powerful man, who seemed so assured, so capable in every situation, was sharing his own uncertainties. It was perhaps the most intimate moment they'd shared, more revealing than their kiss, more connecting than their professional collaboration. "Why would you be afraid?" she asked. "Because I've never had this," Marcus replied simply, squeezing her hands gently. "My success came from building things, Evelyn, but relationships, those are harder to get right. My childhood taught me how easily love can be withheld. My adult life didn't offer many opportunities for genuine connection." He raised her hands to his lips, kissing them gently. "Trust isn't given all at once. It's built day by day, action by action." His eyes held hers. "I don't ask for blind faith, Evelyn, just the chance to earn your trust with every day that passes." In that moment, as the city lights began to twinkle against the darkening sky, Evelyn recognized something profound in Marcus's honesty, not weakness, but the courage to be vulnerable with her. He wasn't offering to save her, he was offering to grow alongside her, risking his own heart in the process. "Ethiopian food sounds perfect," she said, a genuine smile finally breaking through the clouds of her earlier mood. "And yes, I'll consider your partnership proposal, both the professional one and—" she gestured between them. "Whatever this is becoming." Marcus's answering smile was tender as he helped her to her feet. "This," he said, brushing a soft kiss against her lips, "is the foundation of something extraordinary. And like all my buildings, I intend to make it strong enough to withstand any storm." As they walked together toward the elevators, Evelyn felt a new sense of balance forming between them. Marcus's willingness to show his own fears had bridged the final gap in her defenses, allowing her to see him not as a perfect savior, but as a man offering authentic partnership in all senses of the word. "You know," she said as they waited for the elevator, "I think my favorite part of designing spaces is finding the right balance between strength and comfort, between beauty and function." Marcus looked down at her, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "The best designs always hold those tensions in perfect equilibrium," he agreed, his arms slipping naturally around her waist, rather like relationships. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, opening to reveal their reflection in its mirrored interior, 2 people standing together, neither leaning on the other, yet clearly connected by something stronger than proximity. "I think we might create something beautiful together," Evelyn said softly as they stepped inside. Marcus's eyes met hers in the reflection. In every sense, he promised, in every way. Chapter 5. Third time's the charm. 4 months into their professional collaboration, the Riverside Development Project had transformed from blueprints to reality. Construction crews worked tirelessly to bring Marcus and Evelyn's shared vision to life. Sustainable apartments with soul, communal spaces that fostered connection while respecting privacy, and innovative design elements that made luxury accessible to those of modest means. Their personal relationship had evolved in tandem, with the project deepening, strengthening, yet still careful. Marcus had not mentioned marriage since that impulsive first night, though Evelyn sometimes caught him watching her with such tenderness that her breath caught. The memory of his 2 proposals lingered between them, the first born of protective impulse, the second a more thoughtful offering of a compass to guide her heart. Tonight, they stood together on the partially completed rooftop garden of the development's central building. The evening sun bathed the space in golden light, illuminating the plantings Evelyn had selected to thrive in this urban environment. "It's going to be beautiful," Marcus said, his arms sliding naturally around her waist as they surveyed the progress. "The residents will love watching the sunset from here." Evelyn leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. These past months had healed something broken inside her. Working alongside Marcus, she'd rediscovered her creative confidence, even as Julian continued his petty attempts to undermine her professionally. "I've been thinking," Marcus began, turning to face her, "about the grand opening celebration. The development won't be ready for at least another 2 months," Evelyn replied, curious about his pensive expression. "Exactly. Just enough time to plan something extraordinary." He took her hands in his. "I want this opening to be special not just for the project, but for us, for what we've built together in every sense." Evelyn studied him, noting the slight tension in his shoulders, the careful way he was choosing his words. "What are you planning, Marcus Thornton?" A smile tugged at his lips. "You'll have to wait and see, but I hope you'll trust me enough to let me surprise you." Before she could press him further, her phone rang. Seeing her lawyer's number, she answered immediately. The legal battle over the Sapphire watch had dragged on for months, a deliberate tactic by Julian to drain her resources and attention. "Miss Carter, we've received a settlement offer," her attorney began. "Mr. Hayes is willing to drop the claim on the watch in exchange for your share of the Lincoln Avenue property." Evelyn's stomach dropped. The Lincoln Avenue building had been their first joint investment, a small commercial property that had significantly appreciated in value. Her portion would more than cover the cost of the watch, effectively making her pay twice for a gift. Julian had rejected. "He knows exactly what he's doing," she said bitterly, "making me choose between financial security and principle." After ending the call, she explained the situation to Marcus, whose expression darkened. "What will you do?" he asked, careful not to impose his opinion. Evelyn gazed out at the city skyline. "Part of me wants to fight on principle alone, but another part just wants this connection to him severed at any cost." Marcus stepped closer, his fingers gently tilting her chin up until their eyes met. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember this, objects hold only the power we give them." His words resonated with unexpected clarity. The watch, her mother's land, the Lincoln Avenue property, they were all just things. What mattered was freeing herself from Julian's emotional manipulation. "I'm going to accept the settlement," she decided, "not because he's won, but because I refuse to let him occupy any more space in my life." Marcus's smile was filled with pride. "That's my brave Evelyn." As twilight descended over the city, they walked the perimeter of the rooftop garden, discussing their vision for the grand opening celebration. Despite her curiosity about Marcus's surprise, Evelyn found herself fully present in this moment of shared accomplishment, grateful for the journey that had brought them here. The next 8 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Evelyn rarely saw Marcus outside of project meetings, as he was mysteriously occupied with what he would only describe as preparations. The settlement with Julian was finalized, and though it stung financially, the emotional freedom was worth every penny. The night of the grand opening arrived on a perfect early autumn evening. The development, named Horizon Haven, a subtle nod to rebirth from ashes, was stunning in completion. Warm lighting illuminated the innovative architecture, while Evelyn's interior design elements created spaces that felt simultaneously sophisticated and welcoming. "You look breathtaking," Amara said, as she helped Evelyn with the final touches of her preparation in a private room set aside for them. Evelyn smoothed the silk of her gown, a deep sapphire that complemented her skin tone perfectly. "I'm nervous, and I don't even know why. I've presented designs to clients before. Maybe because this one matters more," Amara suggested, adjusting the compass necklace that Evelyn still wore daily, not just professionally. Before Evelyn could respond, there was a gentle knock at the door. A young woman entered, carrying a small box tied with a silver ribbon. "Miss Carter, Mr. Thornton asked me to deliver this to you before you join the guests." Alone again, Evelyn carefully opened the box to find a folded note atop tissue paper. Marcus's elegant handwriting filled the page. "Evelyn, tonight we celebrate not just a building risen from empty space, but a woman risen from heartbreak, stronger and more beautiful than before. Before you join me, I ask you to follow the path marked with silver ribbons. Take your time, each stop has meaning. Yours in all ways, Marcus." Intrigued, Evelyn left the preparation room to find a silver ribbon tied to the doorknob outside. Following it led her down a corridor where photographs lined the walls, images documenting the project's progress, but interspersed among them were other photographs. Evelyn, laughing during a site visit, bent over blueprints with fierce concentration, standing proudly beside Marcus. as the first walls rose. The ribbon path continued to the central courtyard, now transformed into an art installation. In the center stood a sculptural piece that made Evelyn's breath catch. A giant compass rose inlaid in stone, with pathways leading in 8 directions. Each path featured moments from their journey together, architectural models, fabric swatches from her designs, even a small display containing the bloodied handkerchief Marcus had offered her on that first terrible night, their story rendered in art and memory. At the northern point of the compass stood Marcus, resplendent in a tailored suit, his eyes finding hers immediately across the space. As she approached, she realized the courtyard was not empty, as she'd first thought. Guests lined the periphery, watching silently as she walked the path toward him. When she reached him, Marcus took both her hands in his expression more open and vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "Evelyn Carter," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Twice before, I've asked for your hand, each time understanding you weren't ready, first in a moment of protective instinct, then as a promise of patient devotion." Evelyn's heart began to race as she realized what was happening. "This third time," Marcus continued, "I ask with the certainty that comes from building something real together." He gestured to the installation surrounding them. "This compass rose symbolizes our journey, how we found direction together when both our lives were in chaos." He released one of her hands to withdraw a small box from his jacket pocket. "You once sacrificed your heritage for a man who couldn't recognize its value," he said softly. "I can never replace what was lost, but I offer instead a future built on mutual respect and profound love." Kneeling before her, Marcus opened the box to reveal not a traditional diamond ring, but a band of warm gold inset with a small piece of polished wood. "This ring contains wood from the land your mother left you," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. "I tracked down the developer who purchased it and asked for this small piece of the willow tree that stood there." Evelyn gasped, tears filling her eyes. "How did you know about the tree?" "You mentioned it once, how you and your mother would picnic under it during the summers," he replied. "Some things are worth preserving, even as we build new dreams." Taking her left hand, Marcus looked up at her with absolute certainty. "Evelyn Carter, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me as equal partners in work and in love? I promise to cherish your strength as much as your vulnerability, to support your independence while offering you my heart's complete devotion." In that moment, surrounded by the physical manifestation of all they had created together, Evelyn felt the final pieces of her heart's protective wall crumble. Marcus had not simply said he loved her. He had shown her consistently, and without expectation, through actions both grand and small. "Yes," she whispered, then louder for all to hear, "Yes, Marcus, the first will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to take her in his arms, the gathered guests erupted in applause. Their kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. Later, as they moved among their guests, celebrating both the project's completion and their engagement, Marcus kept Evelyn close to his side, his eyes rarely leaving her face. "Was this your plan all along?" she asked, fingers touching the unique ring that somehow felt more precious than any diamond. "To propose here tonight?" Marcus's smile was both tender and triumphant. "From the moment you agreed to this partnership, I hoped it would lead to a more permanent one." He brushed a kiss against her temple. "Third time's the charm, they say." Evelyn leaned into him, finally at peace with both her past and her future. "The compass always pointed to you," she said softly. "I just needed time to trust its direction." Chapter 6. New Beginnings. The transformation of Evelyn's life in the 2 months since accepting Marcus's proposal amazed even her closest friends. The woman who had once crumbled under public humiliation now moved through the world with quiet confidence, her hand frequently touching the wooden ring that represented both her past and future. "I barely recognize you," Amara remarked one afternoon as they reviewed wedding plans in Evelyn's newly renovated design studio space. Marcus had helped her acquire after Julian's vindictive actions had forced her from her previous location. "And I mean that in the best possible way," Evelyn smiled, glancing at the mood board they'd created for the intimate ceremony planned for next spring. "I barely recognize myself sometimes," she admitted. "It's not just Marcus, though he's a big part of it. It's remembering who I was always meant to be." The Evelyn who had married Julian had still been grieving her mother, seeking security and validation in a relationship that provided neither. The Evelyn who would marry Marcus had found her own strength first, then chosen a partner who amplified rather than diminished it. Her phone chimed with a message from Marcus. Meeting finished early. Dinner at Bissett's. I have news. Go, Amara urged, seeing Evelyn's expression brighten. The flowers can wait. Bissett's was their special place, the small French restaurant where they'd had their first real date after the museum gala. The owner greeted Evelyn by name, leading her to the private corner table where Marcus waited, his face lighting up as she approached. "Have I told you today how beautiful you are?" he asked, rising to kiss her softly before holding her chair. "Only twice," Evelyn replied with a warm smile. Marcus's eyes danced with excitement as he reached for her hand across the table. "The Foundation Board approved our proposal for the Design Scholarship Program. Starting next fall, 10 students from underserved communities will receive full funding for design and architecture education, with guaranteed internships at either your studio or my firm." Evelyn squeezed his hand, emotion welling in her throat. The scholarship had been her idea, a way to create opportunities for talented young people who lacked the advantages of privilege. Marcus had immediately embraced the concept, expanding it beyond what she'd initially envisioned. "That's wonderful," she said. "Those students' lives will change completely." "Like mine did when my mentor saw potential in me," Marcus replied. "It's our responsibility to extend that ladder to others." As they shared a bottle of wine and their favorite dishes, Evelyn marveled at how naturally they had merged their separate worlds. Marcus had introduced her to philanthropic circles, where her design perspective brought fresh approaches to community projects. She had drawn him into more intimate, creative spaces, where his analytical mind found new applications. Together, they were greater than the sum of their parts. After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, Marcus's arm around her shoulders, protecting her from the crisp evening breeze. "I had a strange call today," he said, his tone carefully neutral, from Julian's attorney. Evelyn tensed slightly. Despite the finalized divorce and settlement, Julian's shadow occasionally still darkened her life with petty manipulations. What did he want? Apparently, Julian's company is struggling. He's looking for investors. Marcus's expression remained impassive. His lawyer suggested I might be interested, given my connection to Julian's former wife. Evelyn stopped walking, turning to face him. "That's unbelievably presumptuous." "It's desperate," Marcus corrected gently. "His investors are pulling out after that expose on his business practices. The market recognizes a sinking ship." A complicated emotion filled Evelyn's chest, not great satisfaction at Julian's troubles, but perhaps validation that his true character was finally being revealed to others. "What did you tell them?" she asked. "That I make investment decisions based on sound business principles, not personal connections." Marcus's thumb traced circles on her hand. "And that his approach demonstrated exactly why his company is failing." Evelyn nodded, grateful that Marcus understood her complex feelings about Julian without her needing to explain them. "Let's not waste any more of our evening on him." Marcus smiled, drawing her close. "I'd much rather discuss our plans for the weekend. My lake house is ready for visitors, and I'm thinking a private getaway before the holiday rush might be just what we need." The lake house was Marcus's sanctuary, a modernist retreat nestled in the woods 2 hours from the city. Evelyn had visited only once before, during a summer thunderstorm that had trapped them indoors for 2 days. The memory of those rain-soaked hours, explored in each other's arms, brought heat to her cheeks. "I'd love that," she replied, her voice dropping to a more intimate register that made Marcus's eyes darken. His kiss was still respectful of their public setting, but carried a promise of passion to come. "Should we head home?" he murmured against her lips. Home? The word held new meaning now. 3 weeks ago, Evelyn had moved into Marcus's penthouse, though they maintained her apartment as a private studio space. The transition had been surprisingly seamless. Marcus had cleared half his closet before she arrived and encouraged her to rearrange furniture and add her own touches to the space. "Yes," she agreed, suddenly eager for the privacy that would allow her to show rather than tell him how deeply her love had grown. The lake house welcomed them with panoramic views of autumn foliage reflected in still waters. Marcus had arranged everything. The kitchen stocked with their favorite foods, the fireplace prepared for lighting, fresh flowers in the bedroom. After a walk along the shoreline, they returned as sunset painted the sky in spectacular hues of orange and pink. Marcus opened wine while Evelyn prepared a simple dinner, moving around each other with the comfortable synchronicity of partners who had learned each other's rhythms. "I've been thinking," Evelyn said as they lingered over dessert. the fire casting warm light across the modern living space. "About my birthday next year." Marcus's expression softened. He knew the date still carried painful associations. Her birthday, shared with what would have been her second wedding anniversary with Julian, now forever linked to public humiliation. "What about it?" he asked gently. "I want to reclaim it, make new memories." She reached for his hand. "I want us to get married on my birthday." Surprise and pleasure crossed Marcus's face. "Are you sure?" "We could choose any other date." "I'm sure," Evelyn said firmly. "I don't want that date to belong to pain anymore. I want it to represent our beginning, not my ending with Julian." Marcus rose from his chair, pulling her into his arms with sudden fierceness. "Evelyn Carter," he murmured against her hair, "you continue to astonish me with your courage." She tipped her face up to his. "Is that a yes?" "It's 1,000 times yes," he replied before capturing her lips in a kiss that quickly deepened from tender to hungry. Evelyn pressed closer, her body responding to the now familiar, yet still exhilarating feel of him against her. Unlike her physical relationship with Julian, which had become perfunctory and one-sided toward the end, intimacy with Marcus was a continuing revelation, each encounter, both passionate and profoundly connecting. His hand slid down her back, drawing her hips against his. "Bedroom?" he suggested, his voice rough with desire. Evelyn smiled, her fingers already working at the buttons of his shirt. "Too far," she whispered, guiding him toward the plush rug before the fireplace. Marcus laughed softly, following her lead with willing abandon. This was another aspect of their relationship that differed so dramatically from her past. The perfect balance of giving and taking, leading and following, each always attuned to the other's pleasure. Later, wrapped in a soft throw before the dying embers, Evelyn rested her head on Marcus's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy?" he asked, fingers trailing lazily along her spine. "Completely," she replied truthfully, and after a moment's hesitation, "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After that night, I was certain something inside me had died forever." Marcus shifted to see her face, his expression serious. "Nothing about you died that night, Evelyn. You were wounded, yes, but what makes you extraordinary is how those wounds have become sources of strength and compassion." His words touched something deep within her, the recognition that her journey from humiliation to happiness had changed her fundamentally, but not in the ways Julian had intended. Where he had sought to diminish her, she had expanded. Where he had tried to isolate her, she had found deeper connection. "I love you," she said simply, the words still new enough between them to carry special weight. "Not because you rescued me, but because you saw me clearly when I couldn't see myself." Marcus's kiss was gentle, reverent. "And I love you, Evelyn Carter, soon to be Thornton, for exactly who you are: brilliant, resilient, and absolutely irreplaceable." As moonlight spilled through the windows, painting silver patterns across their entwined bodies, Evelyn felt the final ghosts of her past release their hold. The future stretched before them, bright with promise and partnership, a future built on mutual respect, shared vision, and a love tested by fire and found unbreakable. Chapter 7. Shadows from the Past. The winter sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Evelyn reviewed fabric samples for their wedding. In just 4 months, she would marry Marcus on her birthday, transforming a date marked by humiliation into one of celebration. The thought still filled her with a sense of triumphant joy. Her phone vibrated with an unknown number. Normally, she would let it go to voicemail, but with wedding preparations underway, she answered, in case it was a vendor. "Evelyn Carter," she greeted professionally. There was a moment of silence before a voice she hadn't heard in months responded. "Evelyn." Not Julian's voice, a woman's. "Who is this?" Evelyn asked, though something in the timbre of the voice stirred recognition. "It's Catherine Hayes." Evelyn's grip tightened on her phone. Catherine, Julian's mother, the elegant, reserved woman who had always treated Evelyn with polite distance during their marriage. "Miss S. Hayes," Evelyn acknowledged, keeping her tone neutral. "This is unexpected." "I know," Catherine replied, her voice carrying an unfamiliar hesitation. "I wouldn't have called, but there are things you should know things about Julian." Evelyn closed her eyes, willing patience. "With all due respect, Miss S. Hayes, your son and I are divorced. His concerns are no longer mine. He's planning something," Catherine continued, ignoring Evelyn's dismissal. "Something to disrupt your wedding. I overheard him on the phone with his attorney, discussing ways to delay your divorce settlement, possibly even challenge the finality of the divorce itself." Cold unease seeped through Evelyn's veins. The divorce had been finalized months ago, but Julian had resources and connections that could potentially create legal complications. "Why are you telling me this?" Evelyn asked, suspicious of the unexpected alliance. Catherine's sigh carried through the connection. "Because what he did to you that night was unforgivable. Because I raised him better than that." A pause. "And because I found out what he made you sell to buy that watch." Evelyn's free hand moved instinctively to touch her mother's necklace, the only heirloom she had left. "Your mother's land," Catherine continued softly. "I remember how you spoke about it at our first family dinner, how your mother planned to build her dream home there someday, how you'd scatter picnics under that old willow tree." Tears pricked unexpectedly at Evelyn's eyes. She hadn't realized Catherine had been listening, had remembered those details. "I lost my own mother young," Catherine said, her voice growing stronger. "I know what those connections mean. What Julian did forcing you to sacrifice that connection, then throwing it back in your face, that was cruelty beyond comprehension." Evelyn sank onto the sofa, processing this unexpected revelation. "I appreciate the warning, Miss S. Hayes, but, Catherine," the older woman corrected gently, "and there's more. I believe he's been having you followed. I found receipts from a private investigator in his study when I was visiting last week." A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. The feeling of being watched had haunted her occasionally over the past weeks, a sensation she'd dismissed as paranoia. "Why would he do that?" Evelyn asked, though she feared she knew the answer. "Information is power," Catherine replied simply, "and Julian has always needed to feel powerful, especially when he feels threatened." "I'm not a threat to him," Evelyn protested. "Your happiness is," Catherine countered. "Your success with Marcus Thornton, your rising profile in the design world, all of it contradicts the narrative he's created, where you're nothing without him." After promising to send any additional information she discovered, Catherine ended the call, leaving Evelyn staring at her phone in stunned silence. She was still sitting there when Marcus returned home 30 minutes later, his smile fading as he assessed her troubled expression. "What's happened?" he asked, setting aside his briefcase and joining her on the sofa. Evelyn explained Catherine's unexpected call, the warnings about Julian's surveillance and legal maneuvers. As she spoke, Marcus's expression darkened, but he remained silent, allowing her to finish without interruption. "I should have anticipated this," he said finally, frustration evident in his voice. "Julian's type doesn't surrender control easily." "What does he hope to gain?" Evelyn asked. "The divorce is final. I've moved on." "But you're happier," Marcus pointed out, taking her hand, "more successful, more visible. Your joint project with that hotel chain made the design magazines last month. Meanwhile, his company is struggling after that expose on his lending practices." Catherine was right. Since their engagement announcement, Evelyn had received an influx of high-profile commissions, partly due to her connection with Marcus, but increasingly because of her own growing reputation. Simultaneously, Julian's business had faced mounting challenges, with investors growing wary of his aggressive tactics. Catherine mentioned something else, Evelyn said hesitantly. "She thinks he might have photographs or evidence he's planning to use to embarrass us publicly." Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Of what nature?" "I don't know," Evelyn admitted. "But if he's had me followed," she didn't need to finish the thought. Their relationship had become increasingly intimate in recent months, with Evelyn spending most nights at Marcus's penthouse. While they were always discreet in public, private moments, a passionate kiss in the elevator, an embrace on Marcus's terrace, could potentially be captured by a determined photographer with the right equipment. "I won't have you looking over your shoulder," Marcus said, a dangerous edge entering his voice. "This ends now." He rose and began pacing, a habit Evelyn had noticed emerged only when he was deeply troubled. "I've been patient with Julian's petty attacks for your sake, the business sabotage, the legal harassment. I let my legal team handle it quietly because you wanted a clean break with minimal drama." Turning to face her, Marcus's expression revealed a side of him rarely displayed, the ruthless strategist beneath the compassionate partner. "But surveillance crosses a line. Threatening our wedding crosses a line." Evelyn watched him, seeing the controlled anger in his movements, the protective intensity in his eyes. This was a revelation, not that Marcus could be formidable, but that he had been restraining himself all these months out of respect for her wishes. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, both apprehensive and intrigued. Marcus returned to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. Julian needs to understand that actions have consequences. His company is vulnerable, over-leveraged, facing investor concerns, with several projects under regulatory scrutiny. You want to destroy him professionally, Evelyn stated, not a question, but a recognition. I want justice, Marcus corrected. Not revenge, not destruction for its own sake, but accountability for his actions, past and present. He outlined a strategy of strategic acquisition, using shell companies to purchase controlling interest in Julian's struggling business, positioning themselves to exert influence from within. It was elegant in its simplicity, using legitimate business means rather than underhanded tactics. Your insight would be invaluable, Marcus added. You know his blind spots, his vulnerabilities, in ways no financial analysis could reveal. Evelyn considered the proposition carefully. This wasn't about petty revenge or matching Julian's cruelty. This was about strategic justice, using legitimate means to hold him accountable, while potentially saving employees and clients from a company headed for collapse. I never wanted to think about Julian again, she admitted, but he refuses to let us move forward. Maybe this is the only language he understands. Marcus studied her face intently. We do this together, or not at all, he said firmly, and we set boundaries. This can't consume our lives or our relationship. We have a wedding to plan, projects to complete, a future to build. Evelyn nodded, appreciating his clarity. 2 hours each week, she suggested. No more. Agreed. Their kiss sealed the pact, a different kind of partnership forming alongside their personal and professional bonds. When they parted, Evelyn noticed something unexpected in Marcus's eyes, a flicker of uncertainty that surprised her. What is it? She asked gently. Marcus hesitated, unusual for a man typically so decisive. I want you to be certain that this is what you want, that I'm not pushing you into something that contradicts your values. The vulnerability in his question touched Evelyn deeply. Even now, planning to defend what they were building together, Marcus was concerned about respecting her autonomy, her moral compass. I believe in compassion, she said thoughtfully, but I also believe in justice, in boundaries, in protecting what matters. Her hand cupped his face gently. This isn't about becoming like Julian. It's about standing firmly in our own power. Relief softened Marcus's features. That's exactly it, not vengeance, but refusing to be victimized. Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening of understanding, a recognition of shared principles. Evelyn had worried that confronting Julian might drag them into darkness, but instead, she felt an unexpected sense of liberation. There was freedom in acknowledging that sometimes justice required action, not just dignified endurance. There's something else, Marcus said, his expression growing serious again. While we address Julian's threats, I want to pursue another project simultaneously. What kind of project? Finding your mother's land. Evelyn stared at him, her heart stuttering. The developer broke ground months ago. It's gone, Marcus. Maybe, he conceded, but property transactions leave paper trails. Developments can be delayed or modified. At minimum, we might be able to preserve some element, the willow tree perhaps, or a corner of the property. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes at his understanding of what truly mattered to her, not vengeance against Julian, but reclaiming what had been lost, the connection to her mother, the physical space that held her most precious memories. You would do that, she whispered. In a heartbeat, Marcus replied, his voice rough with emotion, not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you. Evelyn kissed him with all the emotion she couldn't express in words. This gesture embodied everything that made Marcus extraordinary, his ability to understand what truly mattered to her, his commitment to healing rather than merely avenging past wounds. As moonlight filtered through the windows, Evelyn's last conscious thought before sleep claimed them was not of Julian's threats, but of the profound difference between the two men who had shaped her recent life, one who had exploited her vulnerabilities and one who honored them as sacred trust. Chapter 8. The strategic revenge. 6 weeks into their carefully orchestrated plan, Evelyn and Marcus sat in his home office, reviewing financial reports. Outside, spring rain tapped against the windows, creating a soothing backdrop to their focused work. Summit Ventures has acquired 18% of Hayes investment stock, Marcus noted, highlighting figures on his tablet. Combined with the shares purchased through Coastal Partners, we now control 27%. Evelyn nodded, still amazed at how effectively they had concealed Marcus's involvement. Both Summit and Coastal were legitimate investment companies in Marcus's vast portfolio, their purchases of Julian's struggling company appearing as standard market acquisitions rather than a coordinated strategy. "What's our target threshold?" she asked, studying the complex financial data with growing confidence. These weekly strategy sessions had taught her more about corporate finance than she'd learned during her entire marriage to Julian. 40% would give us effective control, given how widely the remaining shares are distributed, Marcus replied. "We should reach that within 3 weeks, if the stock price continues to fall." The price was indeed falling steadily, inexorably, as Julian's desperate attempts to secure new investors failed. His company's reputation had been further damaged when 3 of his senior executives resigned in the same week, citing ethical concerns about leadership decisions. Those resignations had not been coincidental. Evelyn had identified the executives as decent people trapped in Julian's toxic organization. Marcus had arranged discreet meetings, offering them positions in his subsidiaries if they chose to leave Hayes Investments with their professional integrity intact. "Brighton Financial submitted their withdrawal letter yesterday," Evelyn said, referring to one of Julian's largest remaining investors. "Their board was particularly concerned about the discrepancies I found in the Elmwood project reports." Marcus smiled appreciatively. "Your insight has been invaluable. No external audit would have caught those inconsistencies." Evelyn felt a complex mix of emotions. During her marriage, Julian had dismissed her interest in his business as cute, while utilizing her social connections for his advancement. Now, those years of observing from the periphery had become powerful knowledge. She knew which projects Julian had misrepresented to investors, which partnerships he had secured through questionable methods, which numbers had been artfully manipulated in presentations. "It feels strange," she admitted, "using what I learned during my marriage this way." Marcus set aside his tablet, giving her his full attention. "Second thoughts?" "No," she said firmly, "just reflecting on the irony. Julian never thought I was paying attention, never valued my intelligence. Now, those same qualities he dismissed are helping to hold him accountable." Rising from her chair, Evelyn moved to the rain-streaked window. "I received another message from him. Today, more threats, more manipulated photos. He's getting desperate." Marcus came to stand behind her, strong hands gently massaging the tension from her shoulders. "Has he realized what's happening yet?" "I don't think so. His ego won't allow him to see the pattern." She leaned back against Marcus's chest, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "He believes his company's problems stem from market forces and disloyal employees, not a coordinated strategy." Marcus's lips brushed the sensitive spot below her ear. "The next phase begins tomorrow. Are you ready?" Evelyn turned in his arms, searching his eyes. The next phase would move beyond defensive measures to a more active dismantling of Julian's professional facade. "I'm ready." Their kiss held the intensity that had characterized their relationship since deciding to pursue justice together, passion deepened by shared purpose, desire heightened by mutual respect. Evelyn had never experienced anything like it, this perfect fusion of emotional and intellectual connection. "We have 1 more hour scheduled for strategic planning," Marcus murmured against her lips, his hands already working at the buttons of her blouse. "I suggest we use it more creatively." Evelyn laughed, already helping him remove his shirt. "A strategic pivot, exactly." His smile was both tender and wickedly enticing as he lifted her onto the desk, financial reports scattering as he moved between her thighs. All work and no play makes for poor strategic thinking. Later, as they lay tangled together on the office sofa, Evelyn marveled at how different intimacy was with Marcus compared to her previous marriage. With Julian, sex had eventually become transactional, one more way for him to demonstrate control. With Marcus, it remained a genuine connection, a celebration of equal desire. "You're thinking very loudly," Marcus observed, tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Evelyn smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest, just appreciating the present while letting go of the past. His arms tightened around her. "Speaking of the present, there's something I've been meaning to show you." Reluctantly disengaging from their embrace, Marcus retrieved his tablet and returned to the sofa, pulling Evelyn against him as he opened a secure folder. "What am I looking at?" she asked, studying what appeared to be property records. "Your mother's land," Marcus said softly. "I've been negotiating with the developer who purchased it after you sold it for Julian's watch." Evelyn's breath caught. Though she had made peace with losing her mother's property, the mention of it still stirred deep emotion. The development stalled due to permit issues, Marcus continued. The company is willing to sell the parcel back at a premium, of course, but within reach. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes as she stared at the documents. You would do that? In a heartbeat, Marcus replied, his voice rough with feeling, not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you. Evelyn kissed him with all the emotion she couldn't express in words. This gesture embodied everything that made Marcus extraordinary: his ability to understand what truly mattered to her, his commitment to healing, rather than merely avenging past wounds. When they finally parted, Marcus brushed away a tear from her cheek. Is that a yes to pursuing this? Yes, Evelyn whispered, but not just for me, for us. A place we could build something together, something with roots in my past, but faces toward our future. The tenderness in Marcus's expression made her heart ache with love. I was hoping you'd say that. Their second lovemaking was slower, deeper, a physical manifestation of the emotional territory they had just explored together. Afterward, as the rain continued its gentle rhythm against the windows, they returned to their strategic planning with renewed focus. Tomorrow, Marcus said, outlining the next steps, Sterling Bank will call in Julian's corporate loans for review, citing industry volatility concerns. Simultaneously, my legal team will file those trademark complaints regarding the Crestwood development names. Evelyn nodded, adding, and I'll meet with Nora Bennett from the Business Journal. She's been investigating predatory lending practices and would be very interested in those documents from former clients. Their plan was comprehensive but ethical, no fabricated evidence, no illegal tactics, simply strategic application of pressure to a business structure already compromised by Julian's own actions. The goal wasn't merely to acquire his company, but to ensure his business practices faced appropriate scrutiny. 3 more weeks, Marcus estimated, studying their timeline. Then we'll have controlling interest and can call for a full board review. Evelyn's phone chimed with an alert, an industry publication announcing Julian Hayes would be receiving the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award at next month's Commerce Association Gala. He's still got friends in high places, she noted, showing Marcus the notification. Marcus's expression shifted to one of shrewd calculation. That gala would be the perfect setting for the final phase of our plan. What are you thinking? A public revelation, but with absolute precision, no collateral damage to innocent employees or legitimate projects. He took her hand, his expression serious. This isn't about humiliating him the way he humiliated you, Evelyn. It's about proper accountability for years of business practices that have hurt clients, employees, and investors. Evelyn nodded, appreciating once again the clear ethical boundaries Marcus maintained, even in pursuit of justice. The gala is exactly 1 month before our wedding. Perfect timing to close this chapter completely. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her engagement ring. And then we focus entirely on our future. No more looking back. As they finalized their strategy for the coming weeks, Evelyn felt a profound sense of empowerment. This wasn't the bitter vengeance of a wounded heart, but the measured response of a woman who had found her strength and a partner who valued it. Julian had sought to break her with public humiliation. Instead, he had set in motion events that led her to discover her truest self and deepest love. There was a certain poetic justice in that reality, one that no strategic plan could have designed, but which Evelyn treasured above all else. Chapter 9. Justice served. The Commerce Association Gala transformed the grand ballroom of the Crestmont Hotel into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements, while the city's business elite networked with practiced charm. Evelyn stood at the entrance, her hand tucked securely in Marcus's arm, acutely aware of the symmetry. Almost 1 year ago, she had entered a different ballroom on her ill-fated anniversary night. Tonight, she wore deep indigo rather than scarlet, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo adorned with sapphire pins, a gift from Marcus to mark 3 months until their wedding. Ready? Marcus asked softly, his eyes conveying both concern and admiration. Evelyn nodded, drawing strength from his presence and the knowledge of what they had accomplished together over the past months. They had methodically acquired 42% of Hayes investment stock through various holdings, positioned key allies on the corporate board, and compiled irrefutable documentation of Julian's questionable business practices. Tonight would bring their careful strategy to fruition. As they moved through the crowd, Evelyn felt curious gazes following them. Their relationship had become a subject of business gossip. The successful designer, who had risen from public humiliation to partnership with one of the city's most respected developers. Some whispered about opportunism, others about a fairy tale redemption. None knew the truth of the deep, multifaceted bond they had forged. Evelyn Carter, a familiar voice, cut through her thoughts. "I'm surprised to see you here." Julian stood before them, champagne in hand, his expression a practiced mask of nonchalance. Though impeccably dressed in an expensive tuxedo, Evelyn noted signs of strain around his eyes, the slight tension in his smile. "Julian," she acknowledged calmly, "congratulations on your award." His gaze flicked dismissively to Marcus before returning to her. "Enjoying your moment in the spotlight, I see, though I wonder how long Mr. Thornton's interest will last once the novelty wears off." Marcus's hand pressed reassuringly against the small of Evelyn's back, but he remained silent, allowing her to lead this encounter as they had agreed. "I've learned the difference between genuine partnership and exploitation." "Julian," Evelyn replied evenly. "It's been quite educational." Something dangerous flashed in Julian's eyes. "Educational enough to understand the precarious nature of reputation in our circles?" "I still have those photos we discussed." Marcus spoke then, his tone pleasant but underscored with steel. "Mr. Hayes, I suggest you reconsider any plans involving manipulated images or defamation. The legal consequences would be substantial." "Always hiding behind your billionaire boyfriend," Julian sneered at Evelyn. "Some things never change." Evelyn smiled, the serene confidence in her expression clearly unsettling her ex-husband. "Actually, Julian, everything has changed. Enjoy your award." As they walked away, Marcus leaned close to whisper, "Perfectly handled." "Are you all right?" "Better than all right," Evelyn replied truthfully. "He has no power over me anymore." They took their places at a table near the front, strategically positioned to view both the stage and Julian's table across the room. The evening progressed through dinner and preliminary speeches, the tension building within Evelyn like a perfectly orchestrated crescendo. When the association president approached the podium to present the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, Evelyn exchanged a subtle nod with Marcus. It was time. "Before we present tonight's honor," the president announced, "we have a special presentation from Marcus Thornton of Thornton Sustainable Development, who has an exciting announcement relevant to our community." Julian's head snapped up, confusion evident in his expression as Marcus moved confidently to the stage. This deviation from the program had not been publicized, a last-minute arrangement, facilitated by Marcus's substantial donation to the association's scholarship fund. "Thank you," Marcus began, his commanding presence immediately captivating the audience. "As many of you know, my company is committed to ethical development that serves communities while providing returns to investors. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce our newest acquisition." A multimedia presentation illuminated the screens flanking the stage, displaying the corporate logo of Hayes Investments. "Effective as of market close today, Thornton Sustainable Development has acquired controlling interest in Hayes Investments," Marcus continued smoothly. "We look forward to integrating their portfolio into our ethical business framework after a comprehensive corporate restructuring." The room erupted in murmurs. Evelyn watched Julian's face drain of color as he grasped the implications. Not only had he lost control of his company, but the restructuring clearly suggested an audit of his business practices. Marcus was continuing, his tone measured and professional. "As part of our due diligence process, we've identified several projects requiring immediate attention to address compliance concerns." The presentation shifted to show documentation of the Elmwood development, the project where Evelyn knew Julian had misrepresented environmental impact studies to secure permits. "Transparency is essential to rebuilding investor confidence," Marcus explained, detailing specific remediation plans without explicitly stating what had necessitated them. His approach was masterful, presenting the information as straightforward business restructuring rather than accusation, while ensuring everyone in the room understood the subtext. As Marcus outlined the new direction for Hayes Investments, Evelyn watched Julian attempting to maintain composure, his knuckles white around his champagne flute. When Marcus returned to their table amid enthusiastic applause, Julian was already on his feet, making his way toward them, with barely contained fury. "You orchestrated this," he hissed, looming over their table. "You manipulated the market to seize my company." Marcus regarded him calmly. "We made legitimate investments in an undervalued company with promising assets, standard business practice. Mr. Hayes, this is a personal vendetta," Julian insisted, his voice rising enough to draw attention from nearby tables. Evelyn stood, facing him directly. "No, Julian, this is accountability, something you've avoided for far too long." From her evening bag, she withdrew a small velvet box. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, opening it to reveal the sapphire watch, the catalyst for their original confrontation. "I don't want that," he said dismissively. "Neither do I," Evelyn replied. "It represents everything wrong with our relationship's surface beauty, concealing empty values." She placed the box on the table between them. "Consider it severance from our past. I'm keeping my mother's land, though." Julian's expression shifted from anger to confusion. That land was sold and purchased again. At fair market value, Marcus interjected smoothly. Understanding dawned on Julian's face as he finally comprehended the extent of their strategy, not just the business acquisition, but the reclamation of what he had forced Evelyn to sacrifice. "You won't get away with this," he threatened, his composure cracking. "I have friends on the Commerce Commission. The Regulatory Board will receive complete documentation of the Elmwood environmental reports tomorrow," Evelyn interrupted, "along with the loan restructuring on the Bayview properties, unless you'd prefer to address those issues internally during the transition." Julian stared at her, temporarily speechless at her detailed knowledge of his most problematic projects. "You were right about one thing, Julian," Evelyn continued quietly. "I was paying attention during our marriage, just not to the things you thought important. While you were monitoring my appearance and social connections, I was observing business practices that should never have been normalized." The association president approached, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right here?" "Perfectly fine," Marcus assured him. "Mr. Hayes was just congratulating us on the acquisition." The president beamed. "Excellent. Julian, we're ready for your award presentation now." Trapped by social convention, Julian had no choice but to follow the president toward the stage. As he walked away, he glanced back once, his expression a mixture of rage and dawning fear. "He knows," Evelyn murmured as she and Marcus retook their seats. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "and more importantly, he knows we know. The board meeting tomorrow will determine whether he cooperates with the restructuring or faces public disclosure of his practices." Evelyn watched as Julian accepted his award with a strained smile, his speech noticeably shorter than planned. The irony wasn't lost on her. Receiving an Excellence Award minutes after learning his business empire was crumbling due to his own ethical failures. When the gala concluded, Marcus led Evelyn to the terrace, overlooking the city lights. The spring night was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from the hotel gardens below. "How do you feel?" he asked, studying her face in the soft illumination. Evelyn considered the question carefully. "Complete," she finally answered. "Not because of what happened to Julian, but because I closed that chapter on my own terms." Marcus smiled, drawing her into his arms. "You were magnificent tonight. Your strength continues to astonish me." "It was our strategy," she reminded him, her hands coming to rest against his chest. "Our justice. True," he acknowledged. "But watching you face him so composed, so clearly beyond his power to hurt you, that was all Evelyn Carter, the woman I fall more deeply in love with every day." Their kiss beneath the stars held the sweetness of victory, not over an enemy, but over the shadows of doubt and pain that had once threatened to define Evelyn's story. As Marcus's arms enfolded her, she knew with absolute certainty that justice had been served not through vengeance, but through the triumph of integrity over manipulation, of authentic love over exploitation. "Take me home," she whispered against his lips. "We have a wedding to plan and a future to build." Marcus's smile held all the promises she would ever need. "Home it is, though perhaps with a brief detour." "What kind of detour?" Evelyn asked, intrigued by the mischievous light in his eyes. "I thought we might drive past your mother's land," he suggested. "Under the moonlight, you can begin to envision what we'll create there together." Evelyn's heart swelled with love for this man who understood so perfectly what would bring her joy in this moment of closure. "That sounds perfect." As they left the gala hand in hand, Evelyn glanced back once at the ballroom, where Julian stood alone, the weight of consequences finally settling on his shoulders. She felt not triumph, but a quiet certainty that the scales had balanced at last. Chapter 10. The ultimate reckoning. 1 year to the day after Evelyn's public humiliation, the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel had been transformed once again. This time, instead of anniversary decorations, the space bloomed with cascades of white lilies and blue delphiniums. Elegant table settings glittering with crystal and silver, a wedding celebration, but also a reclamation. Evelyn taking back a date that had once brought her to her knees. In the bridal suite, Amara adjusted the delicate lace of Evelyn's gown, an original design combining classic silhouettes with modern elements, much like the woman herself. "Nervous?" Amara asked, securing the last pearl button. Evelyn shook her head, studying her reflection. The woman who looked back bore little resemblance to the devastated figure who had collapsed in tears on this same date a year ago. Her eyes held confidence rather than desperate hope, her smile genuine rather than carefully maintained. "Not nervous," she replied, "just complete." The suite door opened to admit Marcus's 16-year-old sister, Lila, resplendent in her bridesmaid dress. "He's here," she announced with a conspiratorial grin, "right on schedule." Evelyn turned from the mirror, momentarily confused. "Marcus? He's not supposed to see me before—" "Not Marcus," Lila clarified, her expression turning serious. "Julian. He just arrived, exactly as you predicted." A small smile curved Evelyn's lips. "Perfect." After the Commerce Association Gala 3 months ago, Julian had faced the consequences of his business practices. The board of Hayes Investments, now controlled by Marcus, had offered him a choice: resign quietly with a modest severance package, or face a comprehensive audit that would likely trigger regulatory investigations. Julian had chosen the former, but his resentment festered. 2 weeks ago, through carefully arranged channels, information about Evelyn and Marcus's wedding date and venue had reached him. The invitation had never been sent, but Evelyn had known Julian's wounded pride would bring him here today, unable to resist witnessing her happiness, perhaps even harboring fantasies of disrupting it. "Is everything in place?" she asked. Lila nodded confirmation. "Security has been briefed. The media is positioned exactly where you specified." Amara checked her watch. Elliot should be approaching him now. Elliot, Marcus's head of security, had precise instructions for handling Julian, not removing him immediately, but guiding events according to the carefully orchestrated plan Evelyn and Marcus had designed together, their final act of justice. "I need a moment alone," Evelyn said, squeezing Amara's hand gratefully. When her friends had departed, Evelyn moved to the window overlooking the hotel's entrance courtyard. From this vantage point, she could see Elliot approaching Julian, who stood uncertainly at the perimeter of arriving guests. The conversation appeared cordial, Julian's expression shifting from defiance to surprise as Elliot gestured toward the building's side entrance. Evelyn's phone chimed with a message from Marcus. "Our guest has arrived," proceeding as planned. "I love you beyond measure," she smiled, typing a quick response. "See you at the altar. I'll be the one in white." Returning to the mirror for a final appraisal, Evelyn touched the compass necklace Marcus had given her during his first true proposal. She had incorporated it into her wedding ensemble. The delicate silver pendant nestled against her collarbones above the sweetheart neckline of her gown. North still pointed north, as Marcus had said, a constant in a world of change. A soft knock at the door was followed by the entrance of her father, distinguished in his formal attire, eyes growing misty at the sight of his daughter as a bride. "It's time, sweetheart," he said, offering his arm. "Ready to start your new beginning?" Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling absolute certainty settle in her heart. More than ready. The wedding ceremony unfolded with flawless elegance. Evelyn walked down the aisle toward Marcus, whose expression of wonder and devotion nearly brought her to tears. Their vows, written together during quiet evenings in their home, spoke of partnership, respect, and a love tested by fire and found unbreakable. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss held both tender promise and passionate certainty, drawing appreciative applause from their guests. As they turned to face their friends and family, Evelyn noticed a side door discreetly opening to admit Elliot, escorting Julian to a position at the back of the ballroom, exactly as planned. The reception began with champagne and passed hors d'oeuvres, while the newlyweds greeted their guests. An hour into the celebration, Marcus nodded subtly to the orchestra conductor, who guided the musicians into a gentle conclusion of their current piece. Taking Evelyn's hand, Marcus led her to the small stage where the orchestra performed. A microphone awaited them, Along with several distinguished-looking individuals Evelyn knew to be key figures in the city's philanthropic community. "Friends and family," Marcus began, his voice warm with genuine emotion. "Evelyn and I thank you for sharing this day of new beginnings. Your presence transforms a celebration into a true communion of hearts." His gaze found Evelyn's, filled with love and shared purpose. As many of you know, this date holds special significance. 1 year ago, Evelyn faced an experience that might have broken someone of lesser character. Instead, she transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into blessing. From the corner of her eye, Evelyn could see Julian shifting uncomfortably near the back of the room, Elliot standing discreetly nearby. The gathered guests, unaware of his presence, focused entirely on the radiant couple. "Today," Marcus continued, "we want to share how love creates not just personal joy, but ripples of positive change. Evelyn and I are honored to announce the establishment of the Horizon Foundation, dedicated to supporting survivors of emotional and financial abuse in rebuilding their lives." One of the philanthropists stepped forward, presenting Evelyn with a ceremonial check representing their personal donation to launch the foundation. Photographers captured the moment, as planned, ensuring tomorrow's business section would feature both the foundation announcement and Evelyn's triumph on the anniversary of her greatest pain. Taking the microphone, Evelyn addressed their guests with composed grace. "Horizon Haven isn't just the name of the development Marcus and I created together professionally. It represents the journey many women and men face when extracting themselves from toxic relationships." Her gaze swept meaningfully across the ballroom, briefly connecting with Julian's stunned expression before continuing. "The foundation will provide emergency housing, assistance, legal counsel, and business mentorship to those rebuilding after relationship trauma, because sometimes," she added, with quiet emphasis, "the most valuable lesson from pain is the strength to help others heal." Applause filled the ballroom as Evelyn and Marcus unveiled the foundation's logo, a stylized horizon, with rays forming a protective embrace. The photographers moved in closer, capturing the emotion of the moment from various angles, ensuring comprehensive media coverage. As the orchestra resumed playing and the couple returned to their guests, Evelyn noted with satisfaction that Elliot was now escorting Julian toward the exit. Their plan had worked perfectly. He had witnessed her complete happiness while being forced to observe how thoroughly she had transformed his cruelty into something meaningful and constructive. "Mission accomplished," Marcus murmured as they moved across the dance floor. "Perfectly," Evelyn confirmed. "Did you see his face when we announced the foundation? Priceless." Marcus's laugh was low and appreciative as he drew her closer for their first official dance as husband and wife. "Remind me never to cross you, Miss S. Thornton. Your tactical mind is formidable." "I prefer to use my powers for good," she replied, smiling up at him as they moved in perfect synchronization. "Though I'll make exceptions for justice when necessary." As the music swelled around them, Marcus's expression grew serious. "Are you happy, Evelyn, truly?" The question touched her deeply, this powerful man who cared more about her authentic joy than any outward victory. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. "Today wasn't about Julian. It was about us reclaiming this date completely." "And so we have," Marcus agreed, his arms tightening around her waist as he executed a perfect turn that made her gown swirl elegantly. "The past is finally just the past." Later that night, as their reception continued with jubilant celebration, Marcus led Evelyn away from their guests to a private terrace overlooking the city lights. A small table had been prepared with 2 flutes of champagne and a velvet box. "One final wedding gift," he explained, opening the box to reveal a delicate sapphire bracelet, the stones arranged in a pattern that mirrored the constellation visible the night he'd first proposed with the compass. "It's exquisite," Evelyn breathed as he fastened it around her wrist. "Like its owner," Marcus replied, echoing his words from that night at the museum gala. This time Evelyn didn't protest the comparison. Under the same stars that had witnessed their beginning, Marcus drew his wife into his arms. Their kiss deepened with familiar passion, yet held the fresh wonder of their new status as husband and wife. "We should return to our guests," Evelyn murmured against his lips, though her body molded instinctively closer to his. "They won't miss us for a few minutes," Marcus countered, his hands tracing the elegant line of her back through the lace of her gown. "Besides, I've been waiting all day to have you alone, if only briefly." His touch ignited the desire that had grown only stronger through their months together. Evelyn responded with a kiss that promised fulfillment of that desire later, when they would retreat to the presidential suite awaiting them upstairs. Patient as always, she teased, straightening his bow tie with practiced intimacy. Marcus captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. For you, always, though tonight may test the limits of that patience. Their shared laughter, warm and genuine, drifted into the night air as they returned to their celebration, a perfect harmony of joy and desire, respect and passion, past reconciled and future embraced. 1 year later, Evelyn stood on the broad porch of the home she and Marcus had built on her mother's land, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly as she watched Marcus arranging furniture on the patio overlooking the garden. Her mother had always dreamed of creating. The Horizon Foundation had flourished beyond their expectations, already helping dozens of abuse survivors reclaim their independence. Evelyn's design business had expanded to include a mentorship program for young women entering creative fields. Marcus's sustainable development company continued transforming urban spaces into communities where people of all income levels could thrive. As for Julian, his attempt to rebuild his career in another city had faltered when his reputation followed him. The last Evelyn had heard, he was working in middle management at a small investment firm, not destroyed, but contained by the natural consequences of his actions. "What are you thinking about, love?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside her, his hand covering hers over their unborn daughter. Evelyn leaned into his embrace, feeling the baby kick against their joined hands. "About journeys, how the worst night of my life led me to the best years of my life." Marcus kissed her temple tenderly. "Life has a way of balancing accounts eventually." "It does," Evelyn agreed, turning in his arms to face him fully, "though sometimes it needs a little strategic assistance." Marcus's laugh rumbled against her as he drew her closer, mindful of her pregnancy. "Remind me to tell our daughter never to cross her mother." "Oh, I think you can handle that lesson," Evelyn replied with a smile. "I'll teach her about building something beautiful from whatever raw materials life provides." As the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, they stood together in the home built on reclaimed ground, two people who had found in each other not just passion and partnership, but the rarest form of love, one that healed past wounds, while creating future joys, one that recognized value beneath damage, one that transformed broken pieces into a mosaic more beautiful than either could have created alone. Their story had begun with betrayal, but would continue with boundless love, a testament to the human heart's capacity for resilience, redemption, and renaissance. A sapphire heart, once shattered, now reforged into something infinitely more precious and unbreakable.